So now let's hear. Hamish has been very patient. What are your thoughts, Hamish?
It just looks ugly.
Okay, here we go.
There's a big push to, offer more affordable phones to people. And I think people are more conscious about the price than how it looks, right?
I think we've reached peak smartwatch for now.
Maybe the smartwatch market is declining because people are realizing nobody really needs a smartwatch.
Less smartwatches are being bought. It's being partially blamed on the fact that Apple, the most popular smartwatch maker, released a very iterative update of the Apple Watch 2.
The only company that is able to do software updates right is Apple.
Welcome, everyone, to the 15th episode of the TechRadar podcast. My name is Josie Watson, and I'm joined today, as always, by Hamish Hector.
Hello.
As well as Matt Evans.
Hi.
Phil Berne.
Hey.
And our special guest for this episode, Matt Kollat from our sister site, T3.
Hello.
This week, we'll be talking through some of the biggest wearable news we've had this year so far, from new Garmin devices to our early contender for Android Watch of the Year, the OnePlus Watch 3. There are also some exciting developments we're expecting in the coming months, like the new Pebble for the first time in 9 years. We'll also chat about our latest affordable phone release, the Google Pixel 9a, and our early hands-on impressions. But first off, here's Hamish Hector with this episode's edition of In Case You Missed It.
Thanks, Josie. The big news is, of course, Google's latest smartphone release, the Pixel 9a. This mid-range phone is swinging into battle the iPhone 16e and Samsung A56 with some solid specs, including the same G4 chipset powering the flagship Pixel 9 Pro. In other phone news, the Samsung Galaxy S25's One UI 7 update has a release date for older handsets, April 7th, when it will land on the Galaxy S24, Z Fold 6 and Z Flip 6. People with older devices like the S23 and even S24 FE will have to wait a little longer for their update as it gradually releases, according to a Samsung blog post. If it isn't careful though, there's a chance that Samsung will get lapped by Android. AI agents are becoming all the rage, and Google just released its free Gemini Deep Research Assistant. Rather than a typical prompt and response, Deep Research creates an in-depth full report complete with clarifications and citations on a topic of your choice. Amazon's new AI bot Alexa Plus has just hit the scene, and while it can run on existing hardware, the company is already conjuring up updated devices that deliver perfection, according to Devices chief Panos Panay, which is setting up a high bar for its upcoming Echo Show and Echo Studio releases. Sony has demoed a brand new type of TV display system called RGB LED tech. I won't get too into the weeds, but it combines LED light modules and an LCD panel without your usual color filters to create an image that, at least based on our demo, appears more vivid than OLED while boasting comparable contrast levels. Considering LCD tech usually costs a lot less than OLEDs, 2026 might be the year we can finally get that affordable yet top-notch TV we've all been wanting. In weirder display news, Asus has just launched a trio of PC monitors with an inbuilt air ionizer, which can clean the airspace around your desk of up to 90% of airborne dust and allergens. They don't boast the specs to rival top-end gaming screens, but with prices starting at $129, they're surprisingly affordable, and they could be the solution to your allergy season woes. Lastly, we can't not talk about the actual most important story in the world of tech and gaming. LEGO is making official Pokemon sets. They aren't landing until 2026, but I'm already clearing out space on my shelves to make room for every single one.
I can't believe you didn't go for a gotta catch 'em all joke there.
Yeah,
that would have been the easy, slow-hanging fruit. But it's fine. Thank you for that catch-up there, Hamish. Let's pick up on a couple of those stories, because there's been some good stuff this month. The One UI 7 rollout, I think, is one of the more divisive stories we've had in the last couple of weeks, mostly because a lot of the comments I've seen around it are people being a little bit upset that it's coming, actually.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting one. Hamish, you've been following this story for a while. You've been using Samsung phones recently. Why are people feeling the way they feel?
So One UI 7 is out on some existing devices, out on the most recent Samsung Galaxy S25 phones. Mm-hmm. It's also coming with the budget phones like the A56 we talked about. But yeah, it's not coming until April 7th on some older devices like the S24, and then it will eventually come to the S23 at some point as part of this sort of gradual rollout. There's no precise release date. But yeah, so what is sort of frustrating is it's basically Samsung's version of the latest Android release, which came out sort of last year.
Yeah.
And so with I/O coming up, where we'll probably see some new Android updates in the summer, you know, we've only got a couple of months before it's literally year-old software coming to these phones.
And people were waiting since when? July last year, I think, was when people were expecting it to roll out, I think.
I think so. Phil can probably hop in because he also covers a lot of phone stuff. Yeah.
Around then, maybe later in the year, but around then, it's been a long time waiting.
Yeah. And what do we know why? Why have we been waiting?
I mean, that's the question. It's not really clear why. It might have something.
I know why.
Oh, Phil can jump in then.
Yep, Samsung just isn't great at software.
Boom,
And nobody
there we
is. I mean,
Simple.
it's very hard to make software, especially because Samsung is building on top of Android. And then, unlike Apple, Samsung has to get partnership and agreement and testing from all the different carrier partners all around the world. And there's just a lot of complexity added. The only company that is able to do software updates right is Apple with the iPhone.
And it's all
because
theirs.
they started from scratch. They said, you can't sell the iPhone on your mobile network unless you let us control all the updates. And they're the only phone company that ever did that.
Yeah, and in that sense, it has played out. It also means that, you know, the only routine they're beholden to is their own.
It's definitely frustrating. And I also wonder if it's sort of this delay has something to do with AI and the sort of the big role it's having on what software updates sort of mean in the, you know, in 2025, because we've already seen with Apple, they're struggling to get out Apple Intelligence, and sort of Google and Samsung with Google Gemini and sort of Galaxy AI, which is sort of becoming a bit more one and the same, are doing a little bit better on the AI side of things. I wonder if they're trying to make sure that those AI updates actually feel important on some of these old devices, so they're trying to get it all right. And that's obviously, you know, kind of difficult because you've got all these different chipsets and RAM specs and all of this. You've kind of got to make sure that AI does everything on one phone that you're kind of promising that it will do on the others that are getting the same update.
And I guess hoisted by their own petard a little bit as well by how many form factors they have with their devices, because I'm sure that making it for a foldable flip fold is going to be very different to making it for your standard brick phone. Yeah. So you win some, you lose some.
To be fair to Samsung, this is probably better than they've done in the past. It's very hard for them to roll out a UI to every single device at once. So just giving us a promised date for a bunch of different phones at once that's a step forward for Samsung. So, you know, we should give them some praise for that.
I'd agree. What are your takes on it?
I wanted to know a bit more about it. So the Galaxy AI and Google Gemini, the way they interact, is it the same way as One UI and Android? Is Galaxy AI just Gemini with more stuff built on top of it, or is it its own thing? Because the marketing is never really clear.
They're two very different things. They live separately. Samsung will like to tell you that they're the same and that the user won't need to know if you're using Bixby or if you're using Gemini, but that's not true at all. If you want to use Bixby things, you have to know where to find Bixby. And the same is true for Gemini. So, you know, they're still separate, but separate.
It's an interesting position they're in now. I think the Android thing has always worked out for them in as much as it's given them that baseline to go from. It's made it easier for people to switch between Android phones that aren't Samsung, which has worked in their favor in a lot of those markets where those phones are super popular or where iPhones are less popular rather. But it does feel like now the competition between them from the software perspective, from the AI perspective, is going to drive a wedge at some point, surely. And I guess my question to everyone is, how long before One UI 7 is actually just, or One UI, Samsung UI in general, is completely devoid of Android? Do we think we might see that in a future?
I could see it going the other way, actually. I could see Samsung going more in on Android and sort of being like the Google Pixel in the sense that they have just sort of the most up-to-date version of Android as it comes out. Because, I mean, they're partnering with Google pretty heavily on their Project Muhan XR stuff with Android XR, which is just going to be Android XR, at least as far as they've talked about it. So continuing partnerships might make it difficult to split off, I imagine. It'd be a bit of an awkward conversation. Sort of be like, we're leaving you, and then in a separate tech meeting being like, we're very excited about this partnership.
I think you're both totally right on that. I think, you know, Josie, I've been wondering myself, should Samsung just separate and have their own thing going? They've got an app store. They've got all the apps already. They're ready to do it. But I think, Hamish, you're totally right. The partnership is such that when Google sees Samsung doing a really good job, Google will just grab that in for Android. You know, a lot of Android's current security started as Samsung Knox security, and then Google adopted it for Android. So I think we'll see a little bit of both. I think that if Samsung really continues to do a great job, hopefully Google will give them more control. I just don't want 2 web browsers on my phone. I just want to know when we're getting rid of that.
Well, the two AI interfaces thing is really interesting as well. And sort of contrary to your point, I think the reason they're always going to struggle to get rid of Bixby is because it's now such a big part of the rest of their product line, especially the smart home devices. They would have to do a lot of work, I think, to align the rest of their products. So at some point, there is going to have to be a consolidation, I think, because if this is what we're looking at now, where merging those AI tools, if that is the reason it's so delayed, it's just going to cause more and more problems. And like you say, we're almost lapsing the next Android. How long is it going to take for One UI 8?
Longer, I assume, the more complicated it gets.
I think AI obviously always throws a spanner in the works because obviously it like they can churn out new iterations very, very quickly. And I think software is always a problem with new launches anyway, you know? So adding AI on top of the software complications, it makes things much more complex to roll out. So I guess I'm not surprised that obviously it's delayed so much.
I want to talk as well about one of the other stories you spoke about, which is the continuing tech trend of stuff what does other stuff, as I am calling it. So these Asus monitors, which are also air ionizing, not filtering, air
so it doesn't
ionizing.
use a filter. It just uses some ionizing tech to capture dust and allergen particles. I think they sort of say up to 90%. I think it's 24-inch, 29-inch, and then a 32-inch ultra wide.
Okay.
But the cheapest one was the $129 that I referenced in case you missed it. So fairly affordable as HD monitors go.
What does it do with the dust? Does it just cough them up in a ball?
falls under the monitor, you know, just like a little pile of dust there.
This is like the world's weirdest cat. Is just your monitor on your desk now.
I remember trying to look this up. It says there's no filter or something you need to replace. So I assume that maybe if it does capture anything, you can just bash it out of the back of it. But
like on toasters, you've got those little trays with the crumbs, and you just like on the monitor, it just slides out like where it is, and
I think
chuck it away.
that is basically it, because I've tested a few air purifiers before that have ionizing technology, and it's normally some sort of surface that you can wipe down.
Okay.
Which I don't know about you, but of all the tech what does other stuff, stuff I've seen out there, this is probably one of the more useful things, right? Because my monitor is always coated with a thick layer of dust that is obviously there because I want it to be, and not because I'm lazy and bad at cleaning. But it's actually a useful one. Slightly more so perhaps than other things we've seen, like the cat bed purifier from LG, where when a cat sits on the bed, it begins to purify the air.
Which, when I heard about that device, it definitely seems like the sort of thing the cat would get on the bed, it would start making a rumbling sound, and then the cat will get off the bed.
Maybe that's the point. You know, maybe that's the point.
It's literally on top of the purifier as well. So, like, I just have this vision of, like, the cat fur being drawn out into the air by this air just halo of cat fur being sucked in. It's quite sci-fi of it all. But I don't know if you guys have encountered any of this other sort of weird tech blends, any that you think are sensible or perhaps not.
There's one from CES like this year, which was the RoboVac with the little arm.
Yes.
Which is, I guess, a weird sort of thing. Everyone was like kind of freaking out because do you need like automated robots kind of going around with little arms picking up things, you know, and then you don't know.
You're one step away from a knife.
Exactly.
I've said this many times this podcast. I will continue to say it.
So that's a weird stretch, but I think with like the air ionizing monitor, right? I think my immediate thought was like, if it sucks in the dust, like monitors suck in dust anyway, so I cannot imagine how much dust it's going to be like sort of collecting essentially right in front of you on the monitor, right? Like I don't know if I'm okay with that sort of idea of like that thing just literally like attracts even more dust than it usually does, right?
The ionizing technology reminded me of the thing Dyson brought out in 2020.
Oh, the mask.
Oh, the mask, the Bane mask. Yeah.
The headphones and then the mask.
So
Oh, yeah.
combination headphones and and they were legally sort of, you know, they brought it out right after COVID.
Yeah.
So clearly cashing on the kind of the fear
Hysteria.
without explicitly saying that, you know, this is something that, you know, because legally they can't say this is something that will filter the air to a point where you no longer need a mask to protect yourself from COVID-19, but they definitely cashed in on the fear of that.
It also helped that there was those big fires going on, the forest fires at the time as well. So I think our sister site Tom's Guide had a fantastic hero image of Kate Kozik in the middle of Times Square with an orange sky wearing this Bane-like mask. It was a fantastic picture.
You know, speaking of COVID related, the Google Pixel phones started to have a temperature sensor around the same time right after COVID, and they couldn't clear that for FDA use to take your temperature if you were sick either. They had trouble getting clearance for that, but it was clearly inspired by, hey, everyone's taking their temperature all of a sudden.
And then lastly, before we go on to talk about our main topics, the Pokemon Lego collab.
Yes.
An exciting one for us. As I say, we want to catch them all, but what sets would all of us want the most? Hamish, you start.
Well, I most want my favourite Pokemon, which is Buizel from Generation 4.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Though,
Judging you, but it's fine.
given the amount of Buizel merch that's already in existence, I'm not holding my breath. I think he's had one sitting cutie, and that's been about it. So, in terms of like someone that's more likely to get actual product, maybe an Eevee, which is kind of a basic one, but I think I'm a big fan of just Eevee. I think that's pretty likely. And then I really like Latios and Latias, which are these cool like dragon Pokemon from Generation 3.
I'm hoping we'll get some legendaries, but I'm same boat as you. I want Eevee, but they do the Lego 3-in-1 sets where they can be reconfigured to different things. I want a 3 Evolution Eevee. So you could have maybe the first 3 of the Evolutions and the actual original as well. That would be super fun. Don't steal my idea if you haven't already done that, Lego. I do take commission by wire transfer. What about you guys? Any Lego sets you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm a simple man, right? So I would be happy with like a Psyduck or something. Just keep it simple. I guess because it's a Lego, I guess I would want to build it, put it on a little plinth, and then just have it on my desk. And then for that, I guess something a bit more simple would work for me.
I don't want a single Pokemon. I would like location sets, because I think the way the towns and the routes and things are designed, I think are perfect for little location sets. Like you could have a little one, the pallet town. You could have different gyms with different gym leaders, and that's a great opportunity for little minifigs. But like the best thing that came out in the last few years, Pokemon-wise, Pokemon Concierge. I want the little island, the little hotel, the little Psyduck in the moped.
Cute.
Yeah.
That'd be very cute. Okay, I like that. Phil, have you got any particular Pokemon Lego requests?
Giant Snorlax.
Love it. I'm here for
Life
it.
size. Big, yeah.
Massive.
Yeah, okay.
5,000 beige bricks.
Seconded, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a lot of beige. A lot of beige. So, some of the biggest news we've had this week has been the release of the Google Pixel 9a. Hamish, you mentioned it a little bit. Oh, she's shaking his head. He is not ready for this topic.
He's got thoughts.
So, there have been some design changes. I think that is the forefront of the conversation right now. We've done a quick survey of our viewers and our readers on WhatsApp and YouTube, so make sure to follow us on both of those channels if you haven't already. And according to our YouTube poll, 80% of the respondents loved the new design. And on WhatsApp, more loved than hated it, but most of the respondents wanted to wait to see the review, which I assume means that they are much more bothered about the specs and the price, etc., etc. With that in mind, Phil, talk to us a little bit about these design changes, about your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's
this
weird.
has
Everyone's
just been a
wrong.
weird Pixel. Yeah, I don't have the Pixel 9a yet, but this is the Pixel 9, and this phone is gorgeous. I mean, this is a great looking phone. I love the color. The Pixel 9a has great colors. I can't fault them for the colors. They kept the peony pink, which is really nice.
Very
the
cute.
iris looks gorgeous. I got to spend about 30 minutes with these phones. Google let me look at them. I look at the home screen, but I was not allowed to do anything with the phone. And that is weird too.
Okay.
It's weird that they changed the design. They've flattened out the back so that you don't get this kind of camera pill bar that was a Pixel signature for years, since the Pixel 6.
Yeah.
And this is the first time they've really departed from the design when it comes to the 9A versus the 9. I have some theories about why they might have done that. I think this is probably expensive to make. This seems like a very expensive piece of machined metal that's probably very expensive, and they're trying to sell this as a bargain phone for under $500 or 500 pounds, and so they need to cut back some way. They've beefed up the battery, which is a good idea. We see that on bargain phones. OnePlus does that with their R devices. They tend to give those a bigger battery than the flagship devices. So I love that. And giving it a bigger battery usually means it has to be a thicker phone. So they probably just push that plastic up a little bit until there was no camera bar anymore. And I think it was a mistake. I think it looks silly. I think that it looks like any other cheap Android phone you could buy, from your no-name phone shop. It looks like one of the cheap Nokia brand Android phones that HMD is making these days. It doesn't have any distinctive pixel flair for me.
Yeah, and it's quite a departure, I guess, from the standard design, from, like you say, something that feels quite original to them. It's interesting how it's quite similar to some of the other budget phones you've seen come out in that sense, where either they've consolidated too much. The only affordable phone we've seen recently that really has much of anything going for it design-wise is the Nothing 3A and 3A Pro, but then you have the trade-off of the software side of things and the hardware inside maybe not being quite as good as the sort of main players. So Phil, I guess, where is it sitting against some of these other affordable phones we've recently seen for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, bringing up the Nothing phone, I think, is important because Nothing has realized that having a cool phone with a really cool experience for a bargain hunter is going to be better than trying to go for performance. So you don't need the fastest chips inside. You don't need a lot of performance. You don't need the best cameras. If you've got like a really cool experience that kind of sets it apart. Pixel phones have never been benchmark winners. They're never top performing phones anyway. So it's not like the Pixel 9a is going to be disappointing in terms of performance. It has the same Tensor G4 chip as the Pixel 9 family, which it's fine for running all of the Google stuff, but it's not going to be winning any Call of Duty contests. Otherwise, I mean, there's just kind of it just kind of feels like a weird step down. The camera sensor is actually smaller than on the Pixel 8a. And sensor size for the camera, in my opinion, is the most important spec to look at for camera quality. The megapixels don't really matter as much. It's the actual size of the camera. And they're using a much smaller sensor this time around than on any other Pixel phone we've seen on the main camera. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect image quality. On the other hand, Google does a great job using AI to really tweak its images and make the A series photos look just like the Pro photos at a reduced resolution. So they tend to look good, they look sharp, the color's great, but the resolution is lower. So if they can keep that up this time, they've got a good bargain phone. If the battery life is great in our tests, that would make up for some of the design missteps, in my opinion. Not all of them.
Obviously, you've not had much hands-on time with it so far. We're going to come to Hamish's thoughts on design because I can feel he's bursting with them right now. But just before we move on to that, palpable. Before we move on to that, Phil, I wanted to ask you a little bit more. Obviously, like you said, you didn't get full experience hands-on wise with the phone that you perhaps expect from that sort of session that we normally have. But what do you think you might want to see from the phone to sort of maybe make up for a little bit of that design difference?
Yep. Pixel phones are really nice and easy to use. Pixel phones, the interface is really pleasant. Google's done a great job refining its Android interface. The AI stuff can be pretty useful. They don't tend to go too far. They've just added the ability to draw humans in Pixel Studio, and I'm a little bit worried about that because I'm just not a fan of AI image generators and the problems that they cause. But otherwise, Google's AI stuff can be very useful. Its voice transcription is useful. When the phone can answer your phone calls for you and screen calls, that's very useful too. So I want to see that this Pixel doesn't have a reduction in features from the Pixel 9. I want to see that it's doing all the same stuff that the other phone can do, and I want to see a little bit better battery life since it does have a 5100 milliamp hour battery instead of the 4700 in the Pixel 9, even though the phones are roughly the same size. The 9A is a little bit thicker, but I want to see good battery life. I want to see all the same Pixel features that I'm familiar with and the great Pixel interface and, photos that look good, that look like the other Pixel photos, even if they're not the same high resolution, high feature photos that you can take.
So now let's hear. Hamish has been very patient. What are your thoughts, Hamish?
It just looks ugly.
Okay, here we go.
Google Pixel phones have had that sort of iconic band on the back, as you mentioned, Phil, and they changed it a bit with the 9, which was a bit weird. Or did they change it? They changed it. Was it the 9 they changed it, or the 8 they changed it to the circle?
The 9.
The 9. Things happen. So they changed it, and it's like, okay, it's a little bit different, but it still kind of has that like weirdness to it compared to other camera bars. Like, it doesn't look like, you can sort of look at the back of some phones, and if you know a lot about phones, then you know the differences between an iPhone and a Galaxy and a bunch of others. But, generally they look kind of similar. They've kind of got the bump on the side. But Google, it looked different and it looked fun. And I really like it. And then you look at the back of the Pixel 9a, it's just like all squashed and ugly. It's just like, nothing defining about it. And I know that's not the most important thing to people. I 100% agree. It's going to be based on the specs. And if it's a good price and it does kind of everything you want it to do, then how often do you actually look at the back of your phone and be like, oh, that looks ugly? It's in your pocket most of the time, or you're looking at it from the front on the screen. If you really hate it, you can slap a case on it and don't care about the back anymore at all. But yeah, it's just, I kind of just wanted it to be a bit sort of quirky and have that Pixel identity, which I really like. And it doesn't have that, so I'm just upset. And I'm going to be upset about it.
I found it interesting because to me, it kind of just looks like the iPhone SE3, which is really funny because when all the iPhone 16e, well, what was originally the iPhone SE4 rumors were flying around, I was kind of hoping for that sort of more basic flat look to come back for a budget phone. Now looking at the 9A, I kind of like it. I am quite happy with it. I know. You can say, well, me and the 80% of our YouTube poll respondents.
They're wrong too.
So feral Hamish. But the Council of Matts, can you tell us your thoughts on the 9A? The Council of Matts.
I haven't got strong emotions. Like, I think it looks an affordable phone, right? It has lost some of its flair, Pixel flair for sure. Am I upset about it? Not really. I think there's a big push to offer more affordable phones to people, and I think people are more conscious about the price than how it looks, right? So I think there's the trade-off probably will be justified for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, I guess the 9A, if obviously the specifications stack up, I guess people are not going to care about the band at the back, because as Hamish said, like, how often you're going to sit at home and, oh, this is so beautiful, Look at this bar, this is just amazing. Like, it just doesn't happen.
It's only when you're doing your mirror selfies, really, that
exactly,
you see it.
Exactly right. So, I guess lost personality, sure, but it's cheaper than the new iPhone, the more affordable iPhone, and I think that's where they wanted to position the phone, really. So I'm like, fine, like, what can you do? They're just where it's going.
Yeah. First of all, I love the idea of a Council of Matts because it implies the existence of a multiverse of Madness.
No, that's
It's possible. It exists,
you're fired.
Oh no, don't do that, because you actually can fire me. So I think the Pixel 9a looks fine. I think the people who are buying a $500 or £500 phone aren't going to be as bothered by the Pixel's distinctive identity as those looking for flagship specs. I think what's more important is performance and price. So I agree with 80% of our respondents in saying we'd rather wait for that.
Suck it, Phil and Hamish.
So the Council of Matt agrees is the bottom line.
There was some people on my side with a TikTok comment that said it looked like a kid's toy.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with that. It looks like, a little thing you'd find at like Fisher Price.
But then to that same argument, you could say that a lot of affordable phones are good for people with kids. They are good for parents not wanting to have, and I think Lance talked about this in our previous podcast episode as well. Like, you don't want your kids to have access to like every AI feature, every powerful thing that a flagship can do. Perhaps it looking like a kid's toy is a lot better for parents' wallets. I'm fine with that.
I think it's the ugliest $500 phone. That's a problem.
We tried to dance around and feel like, no, this is ugly. This is terrible.
It's not as pretty as the Nothing phones, which have their own unique identity. It's not as nice as the Galaxy phones, which make you feel like you're getting a premium flagship phone. And so, it's this whole thing. It just seems very weird, and the whole launch seems a little bit rushed. And I think that we mentioned the iPhone 16e, and I think Apple raising their price so that you can no longer get a $500 iPhone anywhere. I think that is a big deal for the rest of these companies, and we're going to see a lot of movement in the £500, £500, 850 Australian phone space-ish.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. And we started the conversation a little bit in last week's episode around this sort of real rush that's there. And I think, Phil, you raising that point about the iPhone 16e perhaps triggering it is a really valid one, you know. But there is this real race to the bottom to get all these affordable phones out now to a point where they're getting features and, well, releasing before their flagship counterparts. So it is an interesting one. I don't think we're at the end of it just yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more surprises as the year comes out. We've got thin phones coming out as the year rolls around as well. So bendy phones.
Well, I meant the thin phone because it's going to go in someone's pocket. It's going to bend.
Yeah. In all likelihood, yes. And we talked about in the last episode trifold that goes around your wrist. So maybe that's why the smartwatch market is shrinking. But that does lead nicely on to our next topic. Let's move to talk about everything wearables now. Matt, I think we've got a really good Matt Evans. This is here. Too many Matts.
We had this problem before.
Yeah. We have this problem on the podcast a lot as well because half of our team is called Matt. But let's talk about some of the recent news we've had in wearables. Matt Evans, we published an interesting story, I think it's a good starting point, about the fact that the smartwatch market just shrunk for the first time.
Yes.
What's the story there?
So, 2024 saw the smartwatch market decrease by 7% on 2023, and this is the first decrease on the smartwatch market for the first time ever.
Wow.
So
it's a big one.
Less smartwatches are being bought. It's being partially blamed on the fact that Apple, the most popular smartwatch maker, released a very iterative update of the Apple Watch 2. They just had a titanium black and a Series 10, which was a fairly significant redesign in that it's the biggest screen and it's thinner than ever, and it looks like, there's more different metallic finishes and all that kind of thing. But it's not enough to capture people's imagination clearly, and thus they're not selling as well, apparently.
Okay.
Which is interesting because other smartwatches seem to have packed more innovation in. Samsung created the Galaxy Watch Ultra for the first time. Google Pixel released its first different size. For the first time, you can get a bigger Google Pixel Watch 3. And there's more choice coming in different areas like Garmin Fenix 8, Garmin Instinct 3, although the Instinct 3 was technically 2025. But there's more stuff coming from other brands, and it's interesting that Apple is being blamed for this decrease based on its fairly iterative range this year, I guess.
Apple does get blamed for a lot of things as well, I think.
Because they get blamed because obviously they're the biggest player. So obviously a drop in Apple Watch sales will have a significant impact on the whole of the market, right? And in the same report, they did say that it's not true for all the wearable brands. So Huawei actually grew with the shipments, right? Obviously because they are very popular in China, right? So there obviously smartwatches probably, you have this middle class that's growing. So for them, smartwatches are like, oh, that's a new thing. Whereas of the Western market,
it's quite mature.
It's a very mature market, right? So getting an Apple Watch Series 10 that has slightly bigger screen, but the user experience doesn't actually change significantly. People are not going to get excited over it. And as Matt said, the Apple Watch Ultra 2, there was an Apple Watch Ultra 3, which people expected to launch, right? So we had a black Apple Watch Ultra 2, and obviously came out the black Apple Watch Series 10 as well, which is obviously great because it looks lovely. However, obviously, if you have an Apple Watch Series 9 or Series 8, the actual sort of difference is not that big. So people are not upgrading as often as they used to, right? And then Xiaomi also kind of increased their market share because they're going after the lower end of the market. Yes. So in markets where cheaper wearables are popular, they actually grew significantly. So companies are growing, but obviously as a whole, Apple's sort of lack of really big sort of revolutionary wearable launches because of obviously the actual overall market is shrinking. But we'll see how it goes. Are we going to have the Apple Watch Ultra 3 this year? Is it going to be much different? How's it going to look like?
Yeah.
Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra 2 potentially
the Apple Watch SE3.
SE3 as well.
As you said, cheaper end of the market,
exactly.
Which is it's people have tighter budgets now.
Yes.
Premium wearables are, clearly it doesn't matter that much to Apple because they've jacked up the price of the iPhone 16.
It's going to be more expensive. The Apple SE3 is $400 now.
Yeah.
Because an Apple Watch isn't cheap, right? It's what, $350? Which is
to
start with, which is quite a lot, as you sort of say, and with tighter budgets, I've been looking at trying to get a smartwatch, and they're not cheap things, some of these sort of high-end ones. And it sort of goes, well, do I really need it? And I guess that there's a thing, if you've already got one, then it's doesn't come with the upgrades that you want. Okay, I don't really need to spend $350 then. And if you don't already have one already, then it is, well, I've been doing fine with that one for now.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get one today.
And how parallel is this to anything that's happening in the fitness tracker market? Because obviously smartwatches not all smartwatches are fitness trackers, but most other way around. Not all fitness trackers are smartwatches, but quite a lot of smartwatches are fitness trackers.
Yes.
In my head, obviously, smartwatches are bigger than fitness trackers. I think at this point, I think we had this conversation with one of my colleagues. Like, we used to have like a dedicated like running watch guide, and I guess you guys have it as well. But like, there's almost no point of having that guide because all watches are multi-sport watches these days, right? Even a smartwatch, like you can track like whatever sport you want with it. So like all smartwatches are getting more and more sort of complicated and complex in terms of like tracking fitness and health and everything, right? And I guess fitness trackers are great, and obviously we want to talk about Fitbit as well, in a minute. But I think, as Hamish said, like the Apple Watch is an expensive wearable, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it's getting harder and harder to justify the extra price when there are quite a lot of affordable smartwatches out there. They actually do a pretty good job in doing what the Apple Watch does, right? So how are you going to justify the price? And the same goes for Garmin as well, which is, again, they are very high end in terms of price and features, but for a lot of people, it's just an overkill, isn't it? So how are you going to, who's going to spend, $700 on a Phoenix 8 or something, like when you can get an Amazfit T-Rex 3, which does most of the things, including offline maps, for half the price, so you're like, okay, so it's a conversation, it's a different conversation.
I wanted to pick up on the Garmin mention there because this sort of news come out parallel to the fact that we have the rumoured Forerunner 975 later this year. Do you think that some of what's happening in the smartwatch market might start to hit the likes of Garmin?
Yeah, I think Garmin have a slightly different market, whereas Apple and Samsung watches, and I'm sure Phil will be able to back me up on this because he's wearing the Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra now, I believe.
Show it off. There we go. Flex that wrist.
They work really well with their respective devices because they're primarily, like, as well as their health and fitness trackers, they are communications stuff as well. So they work excellently with their parent phones. You can take and receive calls. You can share third-party apps, all that kind of thing.
You can control your TV with it now as well. I tried that last week.
This.
Yeah. You can use your Galaxy Watch with the Samsung TVs, and you can do motion control. You can go back to home by like pulling fists, and you can use the similar motion you do with the Galaxy Ring of that to select things.
But with that, like, can you imagine doing that at home? Where you're like watching TV and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do...
Well, no, because there's never going to be a time where I'm sat on my couch like with a smartwatch on, really. But that's also because, and this is something I think we were talking about a little bit earlier as well, I don't really feel the need to wear a smartwatch anymore. I tried. I have the Series 3 Apple Watch. I got it just before they discontinued it and said they weren't going to be updating it anymore because I was like, they've kept this phone around for ages. Maybe it'll be around forever because I'm a mug. But I just don't feel the need to wear it, right? So I probably wouldn't. But I can imagine someone who would always wear that thing, losing their remote for a few minutes and thinking, oh, I'll just quickly use my wrist. Fine.
I gather this is all building towards the sort of Tony Stark in Iron Man thing where you wear a smart ring or something and you just do this and your holographic TV just changes the channel.
So we've been talking about wearable tech all episode. Smartwatches, smart rings, even some smart glasses. But you know what's not so smart? Connecting to public Wi-Fi without a VPN.
100%. It's basically like... Here.
Josie, what are you doing?
I'm demonstrating. So, okay, we got one of these. Boom. 72 BPM. That's my heart rate. Oh, not anymore apparently, but it was. And now it's 81 BPM. All right, coffee's kicking in. Let's go. And now 95. Here we go. Just thinking about not having a VPN. It's stressful.
Okay, and you just writing them out on sticky notes and putting them on your head?
Yeah.
Is that how you're tracking it all? That seems a very inefficient method.
No, but this is what it's like when you're not using a VPN, but you're on a public network. You're displaying your personal data for everyone to see.
If you don't want your personal data to be the digital equivalent of a sticky note on your forehead, our sponsor for today's episode, NordVPN, can help protect your privacy and keep you safe online by encrypting your online traffic. Changing your IP address makes you harder to track when using public Wi-Fi in airports, hotels, and cafes, helping you to keep safe and protect your personal data no matter where you are.
With servers in 118 countries, NordVPN is an easy choice, and in our testing, it was incredibly successful at unblocking content, providing speeds that will allow you to watch shows without fear of buffering. NordVPN came out on top of our VPN testing for 2025, and now we've got an exclusive deal for our loyal podcast listeners.
To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/TechRadar. Our link will give you an extra 4 months on top of the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description box below. That's nordvpn.com/TechRadar.
Much better. Hamish, as someone who's been testing rings before, do you feel like you miss anything by not having a smartwatch or not trying smartwatches?
Obviously, the main thing I think with smartwatches are they have some on-device control, which you lack. Obviously, some people prefer the cleaner. This doesn't do anything apart from track me, so you're not sort of distracted by your wrist. But yeah, you don't have the ability to control your music or see the time. A big thing is, at least with these Rincon rings that I've been testing, you have to manually set when you want to do fitness. And also only tracks running, cycling, or walking. But you have to manually go into the app and say, I'm going to start a walk now. And if you don't do that, it doesn't track anything.
Stunning.
Which is then really frustrating because it thinks you've got really stressed because you've just gone on a run and your heart rate's spiked, but it doesn't know
count. It doesn't count. If it's not recorded, it doesn't count.
So running
you've
is
been really stressed for the past half an hour. What's been going on? And so that's really frustrating. But, obviously smartwatches can generally, I think, just sort of start automatically. They can tell when you're starting to work out and do fitness. But even if you did forget, you could just manually type in your wrist as you go.
The better smart rings do that as well.
So Gen 2, and this is the Gen 2 Air, right?
Yeah,
so this is like a
Air.
more affordable version as well, right?
Yeah, so this is, I think the regular version is $300 normally. This is $200. And you lose out on 2 days of battery life, so it has a 10-day life instead of 12, which is still quite a lot in fairness. You don't get a charging case. Instead, you get a little charging stand.
Which you lost.
Which I have lost. So I'm just using my charging case from the Rincon Gen 2. It will show up eventually.
I'm never going to not out you in a podcast, don't worry.
I've lost the ring several times. I don't know if you guys, but I take the ring off, and then it's like, wait, where did I put the ring?
I do that.
On the charger, and then you lose it.
I take the ring off to do the washing up, and then I walk away in half an hour. I'm like,
And then you also don't get the sleep apnea tracking on this, which is kind of a big deal for some people. Also, if you aren't worried that you've got sleep apnea, it's maybe not so much of a deal. But I mean, it also saves you $100, which is not a significant,
not an insignificant amount.
And so $200 is, I think, one of the cheapest smart rings out there, if not the cheapest in terms of one that's pretty feature.
It's on the lower end.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably the cheapest one that I would still recommend, because then there's obviously a bunch of smart rings that are like absolute no name, and then just you just don't want to wear them because they're not going to provide you with anything that's remotely useful. But like Rincon rings, I guess they do provide like a decent sleep tracking. They do track stress, heart rate variability, so a bunch of things that you would expect from. I look at it as like the fitness tracker of the smart ring world, right? You got like the full featured ones like the Aura Ring, which you do have to pay the subscription for the Aura app, obviously, to get the full feature set. But the Rincon obviously provides like this kind of entry-level experience with a very clunky AI, but then that's obviously a different composition.
Yeah, separate one.
I'm very cynical about smartwatches, and I'm really just wearing them because it's part of my job. I don't know if I would have a smartwatch if I didn't review cell phones. I mean, I just think, like Hamish said, it's $350. I could get a really nice swatch for that, something really fancy that I could then pass down to my kid. Or I could buy an Apple Watch, which will be obsolete in 3 to 5 years, and I'll need to replace the battery. And, it just seems like as health trackers, they've definitely proven themselves. But all of the other features, I think, still have quite a ways to go. I got this Ultra from Samsung because I was reviewing the Samsung Galaxy S25s, and I wanted to see how the watch can feed data to the Galaxy AI. Samsung made a lot of promises about how all these devices are going to start working together. Your watch is going to know when you sleep, and it's going to dim your lights and turn off your TV. And it's just not there yet. That's not really happening yet. And so I just kind of wonder, maybe the smartwatch market is declining because people are realizing nobody really needs a smartwatch. Maybe we need something else, but not that.
The thing I've been doing a lot of testing on lately has been more around the female health tracking side of things and menstruation tracking things, because there is a lot of question marks as a woman around like what is actually happening in your body when this happens, because everyone's different. Every single device I have tested cannot figure out my menstruation any better than I can. And I'm finding that especially at the moment where I'm using the Samsung Galaxy Ring, I used the Eevee Ring before, I've used the Apple Watches, I've used a variety of things. I'm, trying to see the synergy between things like my body temperature and my sleep and my heart rate as well. They can't even get to the point where they can actually predict when my period starts, which is a promised feature of most of these things. And I think it is like you say, Phil, I've tried a lot of different devices now, and apart from the fitness tracking side of things, the health tracking is cool, but it's not actionable enough yet. It's not, these AI features that get promised into every single device, they're not really doing the thing that actually helps you make decisions yet with your health from a healthcare perspective. And I get that that's hard. You've got to get FDA approved. You get all sorts of things checked off if you're going to run down that road. But for devices to be releasing on a yearly basis when these changes are so iterative now, I can understand why there's a difficult situation ahead of them.
The latest generation 2 came out with this sleep apnea, and I gave that a try. And, I've been through actual sleep studies that have told me I don't have a sleep apnea issue. So I kind of hoped I knew what to expect. The first time I wore the Galaxy Watch, it told me I should go talk to a doctor. When I tried to do it again, it points out sleep apnea is not monitoring. It's a one and done process, and that's it. It's not going to keep checking you to see if you have sleep apnea. And the best it's going to do is it's going to send you to a doctor anyway. So it's not even going to tell you have it. It's just going to say, go talk to a doctor. So
That's the same with the ring cons.
Even their most advanced feature is not there yet.
That is what we're seeing with a lot of the more holistic aspect of wearables. When they say they cannot diagnose things because it's an LED on your wrist. So to say it can certainly confirm that you have sleep apnea, to say it can certainly, there are things it can do. We've had, I've mentioned on the pod before, we've had loads of people, sometimes on team, talk about the emergency alerts for heart rate stuff. Say they've saved they've potentially saved lives. There's some really cool stuff out there. And when we look at smartwatches, because we're quite fitness orientated when we come at them from a fitness
because we're ripped and looking great.
Just look at us, come on.
I didn't want to say it.
Is it obvious? Come on.
There will be no gun show on this podcast. But from a fitness perspective, that's the way we look at these watches, because that's the way they're designed, especially when we were talking about the Garmins and the Coros and the Polar and as sports devices, they're great. As holistic lifestyle wellness devices, there's a long way to go, and I don't think the technology is there yet to make them essential to anybody that isn't super into their fitness or really wants to use their boarding pass on their wrist. The smart rings do a lot. The better smart rings certainly do a lot, especially things like the Aura Ring, which has its algorithms really down pat. But I think we've reached the mainstream. I think we've reached peak smartwatch for now. I think there's a limit to where we can go.
It's really interesting it's happened the same time as we've kind of reached peak phone and peak laptop, peak graphics card. Everything's peaking, and it's a bit worrying.
That said, I think there's two sort of areas where I think the Garmin 975, which may or may not come, right? And I'm a diehard Garmin Forerunner 965 user, and I don't want it to come because I think the 965 is perfectly fine for what it does, and I appreciate obviously it uses the last generation heart rate sensor, which is still perfectly fine. So I guess what can you add that's not on other Garmin watches that would enhance or justify an upgrade, right? And there isn't much. One of the things is, and again it's rumored for the Apple Watch as well, which is the micro LED screens, which obviously would be more better for the battery life, and obviously would be brighter, more vibrant the screen. And the other one is obviously battery life, right? Which is always, people just want longer battery life all the time, right? And there's obviously other more holistic health stuff, which is, ECG monitoring is now on all the watches. There's also blood glucose monitoring, which obviously cannot be done non-invasively just yet. So obviously they're working on that as well.
With the non-invasive stuff, that's definitely a problem that we're already seeing with health tech. Because when I was at uni, I studied biotech and business for my master's, and part of that course is we had to design some kind of
nice
fun
flex, by the way, Hamish.
biological device. Though I'm bringing it up for a reason. But you had to design a biology device, and then this sort of two professors would judge you, one from the business school, one from the biology school, and a bunch of us sort of it was just like a fun exercise. It wasn't for credit, but it was this sort of thing of like, well, you've come up with this great idea and that would be wonderful, but like this non-invasive tech doesn't exist yet. And like, yeah, there's like hints of it that it could be like that, but actually at the end of the day, you just need to be able to get into people's blood and get into people's water to actually test this stuff, because there is not a way that light can look through the skin and do things.
Yeah.
And obviously the moment then you start having to inject stuff into people, that's not very comfortable. And also that's something that has to be replaced very regularly.
I think that when we get to the non-invasive glucose monitoring, at least, especially from the US side, that is such a holy grail for wearables. If we ever really do get there, I mean, I could even see US insurance companies saying you must wear a non-invasive glucose monitor if you want this level of insurance.
That's where we're going. We don't want to be wearables.
This is pretty scary as something who, like, it's like, I don't know if you have it in the US, Phil, but in the UK we get you can get like a black box in your car which it tells you if you're a good driver, and it lowers your insurance premiums. To have that on your body, I think is
I do not need someone tracking how many Kinder Bueno I eat in a week is not going to be good for anyone.
Have you ever seen Gattaca?
Oh yeah, good movie.
Where it, like, they use your genetic data to predict whether you're going to be good at a job, and that's your job interview.
Stunning. Well, thank God they didn't do that before I got this job. Before we close out, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, I wanted to quickly pass over to you, Matt, to talk about the OnePlus Watch 3, because that's one launch that we have really liked this year. You've already called it the best Android watch, Wear OS watch of the year so far.
Yes.
What do we like about it so much?
It lasts for 5 days or 6 days now. 6 days, I think. And it is which is great for an Android watch with a AMOLED screen which runs Wear OS, because the Google Pixel Watch lasts 24 hours, the Apple Watch lasts 18 hours. There's the only thing I really didn't like about it was that it was huge and clunky, and it looks massive on the wrist, but we've just got confirmation that OnePlus has heard that feedback and a smaller version is coming.
Oh, stunning.
They heard you. They were like, oh, Massa is still big. I was like, oh, we have to do something about this.
And I got no consultancy fee.
Oh, man. What?
Yeah.
Outrageous.
So really loved it. The fact that you don't have that battery anxiety. I can go for multiple GPS runs and I can wear it overnight to track my sleep. And it looks quite nice with the right watch face. It can look almost like an analog watch.
Nice.
And you have the option for always on display and all this sort of thing. And the reason this battery, it's gotten such a big battery life, is that it has 2 chipsets in it. It runs Wear OS, and then when you don't need Wear OS, it runs a second chipset in the background.
Ah, okay, cool.
So it doesn't use that like battery sucking power all the time. And they've obviously just figured out how to squeeze these chipsets into a smaller form factor.
That's really cool, actually. I like that. And there's another one coming out this year that I had to bring up a bit more before we close out the episode. Hamish, you mentioned it in case you missed it. A new Pebble.
Yes.
9 years since this bad boy. And I've mentioned this before the podcast, but I don't know if viewers will be able to see this, but it actually says made for iPod on it, which pulls at my heartstrings in a deep, deep way. I'll pull this up. If you could talk through, you spoke with the founder this week, right?
I spoke with Eric Mijakovsky. Fitbit bought Pebble, and then Google bought Fitbit. So Google owns the proprietary Pebble OS. And for a while, they were working with Eric to make Pebble OS open source. They released this for free in the way that everything in the internet was supposed to be before it all got bad. And after Pebble OS was released into the wild, Eric Mijakovsky and his new Core Devices company have announced 2 new models to use the original Pebble OS, all the apps that were created for it, in this kind of like low power MIP digital watch style screen with 4 buttons. It's like, this isn't the new one. Like we've not had hands on. This is the old one.
It doesn't have charge, so it does nothing. I'm just pressing the button endlessly.
It probably hasn't been charged up in 9 years.
The battery probably doesn't work anymore.
But we were talking about the OnePlus Watch 3 having a 5 or 6 day battery life. This has 30 days.
Whoa.
You know what else has 29 days though? The Garmin Fenix 8, right? And it has an AMOLED screen and it has all the other features. So again, I think the battery life
and it costs $1,000.
That's true. But it's swankier, you see. And I do like Garmin, so I'm gonna keep pushing the Garmin agenda.
Price for Pebble?
$149.
Oh,
however,
good.
It is quite basic in the sense that it's this sort of black and white sort of like Game Boy style interface. The Core 2 Duo, the first of the $149 one, doesn't have a heart rate monitor on it.
Oh, okay.
The Core Time 2, the $225 premium one, does. So there are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got the all-important question because it's on the back of the box. This one played chess. Does it allow you to play chess still?
I assume so because it's one of the original Pebble apps, right? So it will run all of them.
Okay, let's go.
I'm sure
the ultra.
I'm sure you can run Tetris. You could probably run Doom on it.
You can run Doom on anything these
basically,
days.
exactly.
You can run Doom on a potato. Well, that is all we have time for this episode. A big thank you to all of our panel for joining us today. Thank you, Hamish, Phil, Matt, and thank you, Matt, for joining us as our special guest. Other Matt. Yeah, unfortunately, you're not primary Matt on this podcast. Just secondary Matt.
I understand.
If you want more news on the latest wearables, phones, and all of the best of tech, make sure to check out TechRadar.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel to look out for our latest reviews, including the MacBooks that we talked about in the last episode, as well as, hopefully soon, the Google Pixel 9a. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.
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 That was a lovely, joyous bye. Bye. Excellent.